What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's Game Week 13 transfer tips. So as always, going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of our FPL squads and talk about whether they are good moves. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. And we'll start off by talking about two of the most popular players, Saka and Foden. Let's get the obvious stuff out of the way first. If you've got two free transfers and you want to bring both of these players in, that is a good move. If you've got one and you want to get the other one, that is also a good move. I don't necessarily think taking players out like Bowen or Zaha for a hit is worth it. I have considered it for Zaha. I haven't completely ruled it out, but ultimately I don't think it's going to be worth a 4-point hit. So then you have to decide, if you can only get one, which one do you buy first? Now, if we look at them side by side, Foden's underlying numbers, expected goals and expected assists, are both slightly better. And I would also argue the fixtures for Man City from game weeks 13 to 16 as a whole are also better. So there's a few things in Foden's favour. But if we think about Saka, yes, his numbers are slightly lower, but he's also on the pitch a little bit more as well. So we're talking about per 90 minutes. It's not very often that Foden stays on the pitch for the whole game. Now, I'm not worried about starts. I think both of these players are expected to line up pretty much every single week. We'll have to see what happens with Saka tonight, because I'm recording this before the European game for Arsenal when they play PSV. But either way, I always expect him to start, and he's usually on the pitch for 80 to 90 minutes. So although his numbers are slightly lower, he's got more chance of getting a goal and assist later on because he's going to be on the pitch more often than Foden is. Also, he has penalties in his locker, which Foden doesn't have. And the next two fixtures are definitely better. So the Chelsea away fixture just doesn't look great for Saka. But if you're getting one now and bringing in the other one later on, I would maybe argue that Saka is the one to go for now, because Southampton away and Nottingham Forest at home is definitely better than Brighton at home and Leicester away. And don't get me wrong, I still expect Man City to score a few goals in those games, and Foden could definitely be involved. But I think I'd prefer to go for the 90-minute penalty taker who has Nottingham Forest at home for the next two fixtures, right? If you're getting one this week and one next week, you could just go for Foden now because he's got the home game against Brighton rather than an away game, then get Saka in game week 14. It's really going to depend on what point you get them. One thing I've considered for my own team is getting Saka now, holding Zaha for Southampton at home because it's a pretty good fixture, and then in game week 15, which is Chelsea away for Arsenal and Fulham at home for Man City, then decide how I get Foden in. It could even be that I sell Saka just a couple of weeks later and keep Zaha, or if Zaha's not impressing me, I can just get rid of him for Foden instead. So I think it just comes down to whether you can get both of these players and at what point you bring them in. If you can only get one and you're bringing them in now and you're not going to get the other one before game week 16, I think you go for Foden. If you're going to bring in one now and then one in a couple of weeks' time, I think you go for Saka now, because I would not want to miss that Nottingham Forest at home fixture. But either way, these are both really good picks. Yes, I wouldn't necessarily take a -4 for them, but I am going to try and get both in my team sooner rather than later. So some of you are going to be looking for a defender to bring in this week. A lot of people already own Cancelo. I don't think I can really sell Trent Alexander-Arnold to many people. Most of you already own Trippier as well. And ultimately, there's not a huge amount of other defenders that are worth spending big amounts of money on. So a lot of people are looking at an Arsenal defender. Now, I do think if you're not going for Foden and Haaland, you could go for a second Man City defender, but it's difficult to know exactly which one's going to start every week. So because of the fixtures that Arsenal have, Southampton away, Forest at home and Wolves away, I do expect them to concede in that Chelsea game, but ultimately 3 of the next 4 are pretty decent, and the Arsenal defence has been very good this year. That is probably where I'd be looking to spend my transfer if I needed to get a new defender this week, right? So I think, teams like Crystal Palace, for example, have pretty good fixtures, so do West Ham, but I think I would back the Arsenal defence over them, who also have pretty decent fixtures. Now, the highest transferred in player so far this week for Arsenal defence is Saliba. The problem is he's on 4 yellow cards, so if he gets one more, he's going to miss one of these 4 games. Gabriel is not in that situation right now, so he is the one that I think I would probably go for. I'm just going to double check, because I didn't check before I started recording how many yellows he's on. He's probably on like 3. Yellow card, so he's only on 1, so he cannot get suspended now before the World Cup. So he is definitely the one that I would get. I know that Saliba has more attacking returns so far. I think he's got 2 goals, 1 assist versus Gabriel, who's only got 1 goal. But in terms of goal threat, expected goals per 90 minutes and stuff like that, Gabriel is higher. And if you watch set pieces, he's always a threat. So I think for the same price, like Saliba is not 4.5 anymore. He's the same price as Gabriel. I think Gabriel's the one to go for. If you need need to save a bit of money, you want to go a bit cheaper, then Ben White is probably the one to get, but he's just not as attacking as Gabriel is from those set pieces. So if you've got the cash to spend, he is the one that I would go for. I know some people have started speculating again whether or not he could lose his place. Obviously, Tomiyasu is back now, so he could go to right back. Ben White could come and play in the centre. But given that Arsenal defence has been so good so far this year, and obviously he's left-footed, I think Arteta likes that on that left side of the centre-backs, I think he's going to continue to play. I don't think we need to overthink this one. So Arsenal defence in general is very good to target. I know 3 in the next 4 are away games, but I just think they've defended so well. Their expected goals conceded is brilliant as well so far this season. They're still a defence that you can jump on right now. You've got no yellow card worries with Gabriel, and I do think, although he's got fewer goals so far this year, he is more of a threat from set pieces. So 11,000 managers have already brought him in. I think there'll be a few more before the deadline. So I know I've talked about Darwin Nunez a couple of times over the last few game weeks, and I even put him in my wildcard draft that I drew up yesterday. And obviously people have been a little bit hesitant about him. He's not necessarily guaranteed starts and minutes. Some people prefer Firmino, for example, and some people just want to avoid Liverpool attack altogether. They are all fair things, and I don't think you should rush out and go and get Darwin Nunez. I don't think he's essential or anything like that, but I do think there's something there to be excited about. For anyone that watched the West Ham game last night, he got his goal, he hit the post, he forced Fabianski into a save from a really great left-footed volley as well. It was like first time, and ultimately he got a lot of chances again, and this continues to happen. Now, we are kind of working off fairly small sample sizes for him because he hasn't always started, and obviously he was suspended for the red card as well, but his expected goal and expected assist numbers are extremely good. 0.89 expected goals per 90 minutes. To put that into context, Haaland so far this season in the Premier League is at 0.93. Now, I'm not for 1 second saying that Nunez is as good as an option as Haaland, right? Far from it. Haaland's minutes are more secure, his starts are more secure. I think those numbers are something that he can keep up for a longer period of time. One, because he plays for Man City, and obviously we've seen it already over more starts so far. So I'm not saying Nunez is as good as Haaland, but I am saying for 8.8 million, when he's on the pitch, he is going to get a lot of FPL points just because of the amount of chances he gets. Now, whether you're in a position to go and buy him is going to depend on how your team setup is. So, for example, last week, I had a lot of cash in the bank. I could have rolled and not got Trent, and then this week had an option to get Darwin Nunez. I've obviously shut that off now, but some of you might be in a similar position if you've started to take funds out of your defence. If you've only got like Trippier, Cancelo and a bunch of cheap players, a few £8 million midfielders, then whether or not you've got Salah or Kane, you might have the cash to upgrade one of your other forwards to Darwin Nunez. And I think it could be worth the risk with Nottingham Forest away, Leeds at home and Southampton to come over the next 4 game weeks. Now, as we saw kind of against Man City, he didn't start. And as we saw last night, he did come off before 60 minutes. So again, those starts and minutes are not necessarily secure, but they don't have that many attackers to rotate now with Jota and Diaz out. I did see a quote from Klopp last night that said that it was a bit of a hamstring thing, which is why Nunez came off. But rather than him having a hamstring injury and then coming off, it was more of a precaution. I think he got a bit of treatment at half-time. They just didn't want to take the risk of leaving him on the pitch. Now, with so many games in quick succession, that's not necessarily what you want to hear, but it's good that he's managed them, and it is good from a minutes perspective that they have limited options to play in those kind of front 4 spots. So I think he could get starts in 3 of the next 4 game weeks in the league. It just might be that you miss one of those green fixtures and he gets the Spurs game instead. It's difficult to know right now because we haven't seen how they line up in the other games and in the Champions League and stuff like that. But I wouldn't be surprised against Spurs if they go for Firmino and Salah up front with Elliott and Carvalho flanking. Because I think that worked. I think with Salah and Firmino up front against Man City, that kind of worked well. And if that's the game he misses, then comes on later and plays the other 3, I think that's pretty good. There is obviously a chance that he maybe only starts 2 of the next 4 games as well, but I think it's worth the risk. I think if the rest of your team has your 2 premiums, Haaland and someone else, it has your Foden and Saka, you've got a decent defence, Trippier, Cancelo and someone else, you can probably take a risk in one of these positions, and why not go for someone who has Nottingham Forest away this week? It is the early kickoff, so we may get some team news. If he's not starting, then obviously he's not a great option, but for those of you that want to go for a bit of a differential, I would look at those underlying stats, and although they're on a small sample, I think that's very encouraging. And every time he plays, just on the eye test, he always gets chances. So for what it's worth, I can't go there, so I'm not going to be getting him before game week 16. But I do think if he starts two or three of those green fixtures, there's going to be plenty of points to come. If you've enjoyed that video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Let me know in the comments below why you absolutely hate the Darwin Nunez pick. What do you think about Arsenal defenders, and which one of Saka and Foden are you going to bring in first, or are you just going to get both of them? I'll leave it there. Tomorrow we'll have a double upload, team selection in the morning. Once all the games are finished, I know what my overall rank is, what my transfers are and stuff like that, and then we'll do game week preview / final thoughts in the evening as well, ahead of the deadline stream on Saturday. Thank you for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe. I'll see you soon.